Now's a really good time to talk about importing and importing different classes or functions inside of any particular Python module. Now, every time you see .py, that is a Python module. There are other ways to use Python modules, but that is one of them. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a new file. I'm going to save this file onto my desktop, and I'm just going to call this pydaytest.py. So Python day test, and I want to actually paste in all of this stuff that we did in day 9. Of course, all of this code is going to be on GitHub, so don't worry about that so much. If the names of the modules are different, you can call this whatever you want. All right, so I've got that saved, and now I'm going to open up another file. So Command N or File New File, and I'm going to save this with Command S or File Save. And I'm going to go on the desktop again and say testing123.py. All right, so the main thing here is where I save these files. So if I look at my desktop, I see that pydaytest.py is there and testing123.py is there as well. If you had your Python folder, or if you had another folder and those two files were on the same level, that's fine. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say from pydaytest.py import. We want to import the message user class. And then all I'm going to do here is say object equals to message user. And I actually am just going to cut and paste this in here. Okay, so that's all I'm doing. And now in pydaytest, I'm also going to get rid of all of this other stuff because we don't need that. So everything below the class, I want to get rid of that. Okay, so let's talk about this for a second. The import. So from Python module without the .py, I had that, but that's not supposed to be there. So the Python module name, which is that, and it's going to import it relative to where it is. So from wherever that file lives, import message user. We're going to play around with this in just a second, so don't worry about where that location is quite yet, other than what I just said, where it should be in the same location as pydaytest. And then it imports the class of message user. So imports that class, and then it just runs some basic stuff. So what I'm going to do now is actually run a Python module. So let's go ahead and open up a new terminal window or command prompt window if you're in command prompt. We're going to cd into desktop. We're going to list everything out. So ls if you're on Mac or Linux, or dir if you're on Windows. And we're just going to write out Python 3 or just Python, and then the name of the file that we're going to be testing. So testing123.py. I'm going to hit enter, and it looks like nothing happened. So let's actually make sure everything's saved. And I'm going to go ahead and print inside of testing. I'll say 1, 2, 3. And let's try that one more time. Python testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it actually did do some stuff. So it made the messages, but we didn't actually do anything from it. So let's go ahead and print out those make messages, save that Python testing, and there it goes. It actually did all of those things. And we can test this by doing ABC or just changing the names out, running it again, and now we see right off the bat ABC. So this is actually showing us how we can use a Python file in a Python module by using this importing. With that function that we had before, we could import a function. So let's just do that just so I can show you. So I'll define some rando function, and I'll just print out, whatever. Doesn't really matter what's coming through here, but I can now import this just like I did with message user by putting a comma, space, paste in the name of the function, and then I can just run that function, and we try that again, press it, and then I get that weird statement that I made. So importing functions and doing things, we can do a lot there. But what we see here is this is doing those getting and setting methods that are just built into that message user class, and makes this a lot easier for us to just work with a class versus this function. Now, if you remember how that function was, if we scroll back down to it, the way I would use it in this context, so I'm going to actually show you how to use it in this context. So I'm actually going to bring this make messages into pydaytest, and we're going to paste this in here. I'm going to get rid of any extra spacing I may have inside of this function. Okay, so we now have this make message function, so I can again import this into here. So now I've got that make messages function in there, and notice it takes in names and amounts, so we can still use that by grabbing the names and amounts. So I'm going to copy this, and we are going to run into a little issue, so I'm going to go ahead and copy that and put this back here, mainly because we actually used that message, something I left out. Sorry about that. So let's copy the names and amounts, and we're going to put it right here on line 18 and 19, and then we're going to call it at the very end. Cool. So again, importing, we imported that function. That function relies on names and amounts, and then in the actual Python module where that function exists, we made sure that we had the message and everything's coming through just as expected. So this time I'm going to get rid of some of these other print statements as well as some rando so we can see this make messages. And again, I'm going to run Python test 1, 2, 3. Notice it actually prints out those messages as we did before. So it does work this way as well. But again, it's not as clean because we have each individual thing that we're adding. We're here, we've got these lists, and it's kind of just a mess, right? Again, this is a much better way to do it, but this also might be a really good way to do something if you needed it. The point here, or at least in this part, is how to actually do this importing. So I'm going to take it one more step and actually turn a folder into a Python module as well. So let's go ahead and jump into our desktop, and I'm going to make a new folder, and I'll just say this py-day-mod, so py-day module. And inside of this py-day module, we're going to have to create a few things in here. So I'm going to go new file, I'm going to save it, and jump into this py-day mod, and I'm going to do 2 underscores in it, 2 more underscores py. Init as in init. Make sure you got those underscores. If you don't have those underscores, this will fail. Okay, so now that I've got that, I have a initializing file. So what that means is I can actually use this in a much different way. But what I'm going to do is really just make another new file inside of here. So new, save, and I'm going to call it make messages.py. And I'm going to copy our class, our make messages class inside of there. So I'm going to copy that. Notice I did not bring anything other than the class and the one single import, which was date and time. And now in that init file, I'm going to do from make underscore messages, import our class name, which was message user. And there we go. So now in our testing 1, 2, 3, we are going to import from the py-day mod. So from py-day underscore mod dot make messages, import the message user. Actually, I'm not going to override everything there. I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste underneath it. So from py-day underscore mod, import, dot make messages. I'm going to explain all this, just give me a second. And then we're going to import that message user. Okay, so let's cut that out. And we're also going to comment out this initializer function. Okay, so now what we've got, this is what's happening. If we look in our py-day mod, as soon as I added that init file, Python now recognizes this folder as a Python module, just like it recognizes the files as .py. So when I do py-day mod.make messages, I can now actually go into the make messages file this way and then go grab messages user. Okay, so this is going to take some practice on your end, but the important parts here to turn any particular folder, and you could do this inside of subfolders. Another one, you would just basically add a init file into it, just like that. So I copied and pasted that init file. Now another is yet another Python module, just like make underscore messages is a Python module. So what I did here was I looked for that Python module that's on the same level as testing 1, 2, 3, has py-day mod, and then it can actually import that py-day mod, and then it looks for the Python module make messages, which is this. And then inside of make messages, we should have a class. called message user, right? And so that import is now importing that class. And now again, we can use it one more time. Notice that's the only thing that's importing that class. So let's run this again. And what we should see above is we do now have this list. Of course, if I got rid of that other make messages and ran it again by pressing up, it shows me just what I needed to see, which was all that stuff. So that is how we can also use Python modules as folders. A little bit of a bonus to this day, only because I wanted to make sure that you knew that Python modules don't only have to be Python files, they can actually be folders as well. Now this importing stuff, again, you're going to want to play around with it. If you have to watch those last two kind of videos again, definitely do that so you can understand. And I challenge you to change the names of the modules from what I did to actually make this execute correctly. One thing that's very important on this import stuff is you need to import it based on a Python module. So what that means is if for some reason you had py-day-test and you also had another folder, just some random folder, so say rando, in here it's empty, right? It's not a Python module right now, but the py-day-mod is because of the init. But if I tried to import from random, so if I said from random dot whatever, import anything, I would get an error because this is not a Python module as it currently stands. Once I put that init file and then a whatever.py file and then a ant-yhing file module or function, that would actually go in there. So the importing stuff is definitely something I want you to play around with. And if you do have any questions on this, let us know below. We will actually circle back to this because the bulk of day 10 through 20, what we're going to be doing a lot of is discussing how to actually turn this into something real. So this message user thing, actually turn it into a really functioning app that we can run on our command line. Okay, so if you have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow.